Welcome, everyone. This is Astroscoop. This is Jeff. How's everyone doing this evening? And today is Saturday, January 27th, 2024. This is Astroscoop's live stream number 5. So we missed last week. I had the flu and got over that. The flu is never fun. And so we'll see how my energy level is tonight and my voice and see where we go. Probably not towards 1 hour and 20 or 1:30, but we'll try to do the full 1 hour. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. All right. So last week I was having some trouble, or 2 weeks ago I was having trouble with the chat. So hopefully I'm going to be able to see everyone. It says live chat. All right. I'm not sure. I don't see anyone yet. It's possible there's no one here yet. Let's see. There's definitely one person. Okay. We have one. Welcome. And one thing I'm wondering is, so my poster here, so when I'm looking at myself here, it's reversed. It's like a mirror image. So I'm assuming this is legible, like Astroscoop is in the right orientation. If it isn't, you can leave me a comment and let me know. And I may have to configure that. But I assume it's just the mirror configuration, because anyone that uses a webcam, you're looking at yourself on the screen. So it's kind of reversed. Yeah, sort of thing. But welcome. Happy Aquarius time. Happy birthday to all Aquarius people, which runs from right around January 20th to February 19th, 18th or 19th is the Aquarius period. So right now on the 27th, we've come off the Capricorn Aquarius cusp, which was actually one of my more popular videos in the last 3 months, the Capricorn Aquarius cusp video, and also the Sag Cap cusp. So the cusp people are seem really interested in those. So I'll try to do more of those cusp type videos. So we're in the first week of true Aquarius. So even though Aquarius starts in right around the 22nd of January, 21st or 22nd, now it's several days in, we're off the cusp and we're in true Aquarius energy for most house systems for the Zodiac. So anyone that's born this week is an Aquarian 1. It's the Aquarius 1 decan. So it's a Uranus ruler. And Uranus rules all Aquarius people born during this period. But this particular week is the co-ruler's Uranus. So it's a Uranus-ruled person, and then the week is specific to Uranus as well. So lots of very interesting energy for people born this week. And all Aquarian people born in the coming weeks will all feel the major shift, and you've probably seen it because it's been written everywhere and all the astrologers and people are talking about it, is the Pluto astrological transit, the cycle of Pluto entering Aquarius from Capricorn. So we're talking, I think I mentioned it in the first or second live stream, we're talking approximately 243, it's usually between 243 and like 248 years for Pluto to cycle the Zodiac and go back to whatever sign it's in. So imagine that. Imagine the 1778. So the wars that happened then and how governments were being structured. That was Pluto and Capricorn. So Pluto and Capricorn is, well, that's something we're going to talk about later, actually. But I wanted to mention that right off the bat because Aquarius people, more than any other sign, Aquarius planets in the charts are going to get that conjunction, whereas in the last 20 years or so, 2008, Capricorn planets we're getting the Pluto conjunction. And oh my gosh, I don't have any Capricorn planets myself, but I can't even imagine how all of you Capricorn suns, moons, Venus, which is love, the Capricorn rising people, even Capricorn on your 10th house of career, with that conjunction can bring power, and transformation in that area of your chart. But I can't imagine how heavy that must have felt. And you probably most likely went through some very, very hard times. So Capricorn planets, you made it. You know, if you're watching this or you hear about this, you have made it. Doesn't matter if you're 40, 50, 90, or 100, you made it. So congratulations, to pat yourself on the back, because as we know, Capricorn is such a heavy sign. I was talking about that for the last month. Such a heavy, heavy sign. And for Pluto to transit that for all those years and to get a conjunction to your natal planet, that's hard work, because it's not only the work of Saturn, because Saturn is Capricorn, but it's the work of Pluto. So like Pluto and Saturn, whoa, those are some two tough, heavy teachers. So congratulations, Capricorn planets. Now we've moved into Aquarius. So we'll talk about that a little later on, and we could probably do the whole live stream just on Pluto. And we're going to talk a lot more in the coming weeks. But that's something to be very excited about for Aquarius people. So like I said, we're in the Aquarius 1 decan. So what are Aquarian people like that are born this week? Well, this week is very interesting because there's a little bit of residue of the Capricorn Aquarius cusp that we just had. So someone that's born, let's say, on January 20th, if they're a very last degree of Capricorn or the first degree of Aquarius, they're one sign. However, they're a cusp person. So it's a critical degree, meaning critical that it's going to be very informative about having specific traits of both signs. And Capricorn Aquarius people combine the Saturn traits and the Uranus traits, so earth and air. So as we have come into Aquarius in these last few days, we just, like I said, we're leaving behind Capricorn and coming into true Aquarius, double Uranus. And Uranus people born this week, I actually had a boss about 20 years ago. I worked for a boss that was born January 30th, I think. And I also worked for someone that was born January 31st, a woman. There were actually a lot of Aquarian people I worked with back in the day. But Aquarius people born this week, it's interesting because depending on their generation, but Aquarius is generally a sign of innovation, right? So Aquarius teaches all the other 11 signs, all of them. Aquarius is the teacher about anything that is stuffy, outdated, small-minded, on a lower level, you know, a more bestial or primal or feral level that doesn't serve our better purposes. And of course, we're human. We have lower and higher impulses and traits. But Aquarius, more than any other sign, teaches us, treats us as well with their teachings, that knowledge is power and that we should have clarity and see things for the greater good. So that's the beauty of Aquarius in a nutshell, is the positive Aquarian can see the good for everyone. And it's not as easy for any other of the other 11 signs. It's not that they can't do it, but Aquarius, if Aquarius is tuned in and if Aquarius is evolved, no one does it better than Aquarius. Aquarius can see it. They can see it. They can be a visionary, and they can see the greater good. So how does that apply to people born this week? Well, people born this week are a mixture of that, the greater good, and this sort of universal thinking, but also kind of old school. It's interesting. I've met Aquarians born this week that were baby boomers, also Generation X, and millennial. So I'm Generation X. Obviously, millennials are younger than me, and baby boomers are ahead of me. So it's very interesting. You'll hear me. I hope you guys and gals don't get bored, because I'm fascinated with stats and the generations. So you're going to hear me every week on here talking about the generational perspectives as it relates to astrology and age, because a lot of astrologers will make kind of blanket or general statements about signs or planets, but what they often fail to do is to apply it to the generations, right? We're all a certain way based on how we grew up, the famines or depressions or wars we went through, what our parents went through to raise us, the difficulties they had, um, whether it was social or cultural or financial, so there's very specific challenges that parents have in each decade raising children. So that's an important thing. So Aquarian people born this week is new school and old school, as I like to say it. There's something about them that likes to do things from a natural intelligence. And early Aquarius planets have a natural, they're naturally talented. Right now we're at 7 degrees of Aquarius. So this is the chart right now tonight at 8 p.m. New York Eastern Standard Time. Aquarius right here. I know it's hard to see, but we have the sun at 7 of Aquarius. So we're truly in the first period. They're naturally talented Aquarius 1 people, and the double rulership of Uranus means that there's no other colorations to being born under Aquarius. So, for example, someone a week or 10 days from now, when I'm going to be talking in my next live stream, the week of youth and ease, the second Aquarian decadent is influenced by Mercury or Gemini, or most people agree. So there's a little bit of a Gemini influence and a Mercury influence, which flavors the Aquarius person. But there's no colorations here with a true Aquarius. It's Uranus and co-rulers Uranus. So there is an ability for them to get with new ideas and concepts, which is the new school of thought, and also be very kind of old-fashioned, almost like Capricorn, and do things in a very systematic, practical, rational way, so that they can be super intellectual, but also very rational and practical, and do very well naturally at almost anything: sports, career, music. Of course, Aquarius is wonderful for music. So there's definitely a natural talent. So I just did a video yesterday, and I did the top 3 traits for Aquarius. So hopefully this won't sting too much for Aquarius planets, but I did the top 3 positive traits and the top 3 negative, or top 3 not so positive traits. And that's what we have here. And please check out that video yesterday and let me know. It's a little bit different than my usual videos, and different from the Aquarius videos from last year that I did. So let me know how you like that update, and let me know if you'd like more videos where it's top 3 or top 5. I know those are very trendy now on Instagram and X, especially with millennials. That seems to be a very, very big trend, is these top 3 and top 5s with astrology. So top 3 traits. Number 1, I think, and this is really something that's often associated with Gemini, is communicative. I think a true Aquarian person that's evolved has a wonderful gift for communication. Now, I said in my video, that doesn't always mean that the Aquarius person is super verbal. It doesn't mean it's always out loud. There's a lot of strong mental processes going on with a true Aquarius planet. And any of you Aquarius people, if you have Mercury in Aquarius, whoa, that's really well placed. It's a very strong placement. So if you're an Aquarius person and you also have Sun and Mercury, you also have Mercury in Aquarius, incredible affinity and natural talents for all sorts of things, math, music, anything with structure, anything with harmony. That's also a very good thing. But communicative, I really think the true Aquarius people are really good at communicating the thoughts, or even like the psyche, if you will, the psyche of the group. What Aquarians are all about the group. So it's community minded. So it's all about reading the room and reading the group. What we saw in Capricorn is Capricorns can also be good with groups, but it's more of a straight line. It's more structured in terms of government, federal, state, local kind of government systems and structures with Capricorns, and buildings, building structures. Capricorns can do that well with groups, but Aquarius has a more natural affinity with groups because of the air sign, the air sign element naturally, and the air sign element's all about communication. So that's number one. Let's see if we have anyone else. Oh, good. We have two people. All right. We have at least two. For some reason, I hope the chat is, I see my chat that I said, but I don't see any. All right. So, number two, I went with psychic. Now, there's a lot of words, and there's a lot of alternative thesaurus words that you could use for psychic, depending on what your view is of it, whether you believe in it or not. Some people are completely against it. Some people are neutral, and some people know that they've experienced it, even without even trying. Aquarius, I believe the most positive trait of true Aquarius energy is psychic, because there's an intuition present in a tuned in Aquarius planet. There's an intuition and a knowing, probably unlike any other sign, probably even more so than Pisces. There's a knowingness, if that makes any sense. And true Aquarius people that are in touch with it know. They can seem like know-it-alls. I've met Aquarius people that have turned me off from meeting them initially, because I'm like, oh my goodness, boy, this person's a real know-it-all. In fact, one of my bosses was like that. But after a while, after I got through that facade and got to know the person, I realized that it wasn't necessarily coming from a place of ego, like I know more than you. It was, I know this so strongly. I know this so definitively. I don't know how I know, but I just do. It's kind of like, trust me. I just know this. And so that is why psychic is number two for Aquarius. And Aquarius people, if any of you have Aquarius planets and you haven't tried to be psychic, or you don't believe in it, give yourself a chance. You can meditate and protect yourself, and obviously use caution. You have to be lucid and sober and clear. You want to be clear. You don't want to be under the influence of anything, and that would include even heavy prescription medication, or too much caffeine or anything sort of thing. But that's number two. Number three, my top three for Aquarius this year is clarity, and I mentioned that at the very beginning. Clarity. A tuned in Aquarius planet is usually full of crystal clear, it's like crystal clear water, but it's crystal clear air, clarity. And when I talk to Aquarius people that are positive and evolved, all generations, I've talked to Aquarius people that were high school dropouts or didn't even finish college, that were incredibly smart and incredibly tuned in, and had a certain clarity about people, human nature, or the world. So don't necessarily discount an Aquarius planet that doesn't have a formal education, or even just a college education, even if they don't have advanced masters or PhD. They'll often have a niche there, a certification, or a specific talent there, that is very noticeable, that doesn't have anything to do with really their education. And again, that's the clarity part of Aquarius, if they're tuned into it. Very clear. And this is a big lesson You'll hear me talk a lot about opposites. Aquarius and Leo are opposites. It's a big lesson for Leo people. Now, we're not talking about Leo necessarily, specifically this week. We'll get to Leo at some point, but Leo is the opposite sign of Aquarius. So all this transiting Aquarius energy here, all this transiting Aquarius energy, Sun and Pluto here, and Mercury will enter Aquarius and Mars will enter Aquarius. All of that is affecting the fixed signs, one of which is Leo. And it may throw Leo off like a seesaw because Leo is the opposite sign of Aquarius. And because of the clarity piece, that's something that often Leos can lack, is clarity. Leos can be very sharp and very smart, and also very talented, but they may miss the clarity part. So that's something that's very specific. So what are some traits that might not be so desirable or not so at your best, or those types of traits that misfire? So obviously all the signs, we all have weaknesses. And I've kind of stayed away from these kinds of commentaries because just in general, I'm a pretty positive astrologer, not what I consider toxic positivity. That, you've probably heard that phrase in society. There's a lot of people that are toxic positive, that are not doing any good for the world because they're not at all in touch with reality, or have any perspective on things. And toxic positivity is not good, just like toxic negativity is not good. But I'm generally a positive astrologer. However, when I do a reading or I construct a chart, it's very important to help people understand some of their weaknesses to turn those into strengths. And that's my coaching piece. But the first one I would say for this year would be undependable or unpredictable. And I know that sounds like, oof. So bear with me. So the Aquarius energy being very communicative and psychic and having that clarity. You got to remember, Aquarius people are often operating on a different level. It's almost like they could be on another planet mentally. And if any Aquarius person with Aquarius planets, if any of you have any sort of ADD or ADHD or any neurodivergence issues with your concentration, that's going to be a real challenge because you might be hyper focused on something, one or two things, and then very distracted on other things. So that's why I say undependable, unpredictability. There's often this thread in Aquarian lives, major Aquarius, where you're not sure what is coming next. Now, that's not always bad, right? It's in the eye of the beholder. Some people like that. Some people might say, hey, I'm tired of dating boring people where I know every move, and it's like I already see 10 dates in the future on the second date, and this is boring. So I get that, and Aquarius people do keep things interesting, but that's something to keep in mind, to watch for that possible energy. The second is erratic behavior. So again, a lot of this has to do with someone's maturity and evolvement. And any of us can have erratic behavior, any of the signs can. But Aquarius planets in particular can suffer from this erratic behavior because there's these sudden shifts, right? So Uranus is in Taurus right now. That's the transit cycle. So you'll hear all these astrologers talking about Uranus shaking up Taurus, which is values, possessions, money, self-worth. It's tied to the second house in the Zodiac. So Uranus is shaking things up and moving things suddenly. So that is something that can make things erratic, can cause erratic structures or things happening in people's lives that have Aquarius planets. And I've noticed that the most with Aquarius moons and Aquarius Mars, even more so than the suns. To me, Aquarius moon, again, you have to look at the placement in your natal chart. You have to look at the aspects. You have to look at the house. There's a lot that astrologers look at. So I don't want to just make a blanket statement and all Aquarius moons are crazy or Mars Aquarius people are nutso. But I've met several Aquarius Mars people that one thread I saw in all of them was this unpredictability and erratic behavior. And it was very hard to keep up with, at least for me. Other people might love that. So again, it's what your preference. But for me, that would prefer things to be, for me to see a little more of what's coming. That's a tough thing. And the Aquarius planets don't do this on purpose, but that erratic behavior, that detached behavior, is just because they may be protecting themselves. They may be drained of energy. This is something we're going to also talk about when we get to Pisces. They may be drained of energy. They might be protecting themselves. It might have nothing to do with not caring. Doesn't mean they don't care. But it does mean that, oh, I made this decision. Oh, I kind of want to be free, though. I really want my freedom. I want my space now. So sudden change, erratic. Number 3 is rigid thoughts. Sorry, Aquarius. This is very true of Mercury in Aquarius people sometimes. Mercury in Aquarius, it goes back to what I said a few minutes ago, the knowledge, just knowing certain things. Now, an unevolved Aquarius person, even a very educated, smart, savvy Aquarius person, but if they're unevolved or immature, and I've met plenty with Aquarius that were not mature, that there's definitely a competitiveness intellectually with Aquarius. So that's where the rigid thoughts can come into play with being, especially people born during this week, especially the early Aquarius people. So if you have an Aquarius planet that's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 degrees, that kind of energy, have to be very careful of crystallizing your thoughts. So getting so excited about a certain way of thinking, a certain belief system, that your thoughts become crystallized. And even if it's positive, that doesn't leave you any room for expanding or warming up your mind, so to speak, to other people's views or to other ways of thinking. Now, I also relate this to myself because I'm very, if you don't know already, I'm very passionate about astrology, and I'm also opinionated. But the difference, I think, is I strive not to have my thoughts be too fixed, because not only am I going to miss out on learning, but it's going to trap me. It's going to cap me. It's going to cap me. It's like if you're charging your battery up to 100%, and then over time the battery loses health. So then now you can only charge it to 90%. Now you can only charge it to 80%. Then that battery never gets to 100% again. So it's important for Aquarius planets. And the moon in Aquarius can be quite rigid as well. That's definitely, I've seen that a lot in Aquarius moon people. They're really fun. They're really sweet. They're very friendly, very altruistic. They can be very generous, but definitely there's a streak in them that's rebellious and stubborn. And if you look a lot of famous people with Aquarius moons, look them up and tell me I'm wrong. So rigid thoughts, that's possible. So there's your top 3, at least for this week, your top 3 traits for Aquarius positive and your top 3 negative. And it was kind of fun thinking about that, because I watch a lot of I follow a lot of astrologers on Instagram and X, which is Twitter, and a lot of them are younger than me, but many of them, you've probably seen them do these little shorts, and they're often very blunt, and they will talk a lot about the negative facets of each sign. And they do it, mostly they're doing it in a nice, funny kind of way, but sometimes some of them are a little brutal. So it's kind of good to keep in mind and have that balance, and remember that we have strengths, we have weaknesses, and that's, most astrologers that do charts or give readings, and this is also true for tarot people, or intuitive, mediums, intuitives, mediums, psychics that are giving a reading. You can't just tell people what they want to hear. Sure, do you want to deliver beautiful, sweet, rosy messages? Yes, but you also, I think there's a responsibility to be authentic and know that, we all know that it's not all perfect. We're not all perfect. The person we might want to date or marry is not all perfect. Our children aren't perfect. If you just think of the dynamics, like if you're a parent or a grandparent, right? Think of the dynamics you have with your children, so your sons or daughters, those dynamics, and why are they so wildly different, right? Like, how could my children be so different? And then if you're a grandparent, your dynamics with your children who are now grown adults, and then your grandchildren, and possibly even your great grandchildren, and all those generations. So how could these people that apparently have the similar values, be so drastically different? And that's something that where astrology can really, really be a good tool to help. At least I've found that, and most of the astrologers I've talked to and worked with have also found that. It's just an amazing thing. So, as I mentioned before, we have the Aquarius, the Sun, and Pluto, and then we still have Mercury and Mars in Capricorn. Venus is also still in Capricorn, so there's still a lot of heavy Capricorn energy, and all that is ruled by Saturn in Pisces. Melancholy Saturn in Pisces. And that's really the only, Saturn in Pisces is the only water, along with Neptune in Pisces. There's no major Cancer and there's no major Scorpio. And this is something interesting. We're going to talk about, I want to talk about compatibility with air signs. And this, try to keep in mind some of these positive and negative traits I mentioned about Aquarius, for compatibility. But the air signs in particular, we'll talk about this a little more. So if you're a Gemini or a Libra, um, you're going to get this. Pluto and Aquarius is going to trine. If you live long enough to see it in the next 15 to 20 years, maybe sooner, your Gemini or Libra planet will get trined by Pluto and Aquarius. And that's beautiful because Pluto's so heavy, and it's in Aquarius, which is air, and then it's reinforcing your Gemini or Libra air sign qualities with a trine. So it's kind of like a nice friend dialing you up and saying, hey, how's it going? And realizing there's a nice natural friendship there, or a natural easy affinity. That's one beauty of the air signs. The air signs can be very fluid and light, and they can teach all the other elements, that, hey, let's not be so heavy, let's not be so fiery, and let's not be so emotional all the time, but let's just have a little fun and loosen up and be light. So that's the gift of you Aquarius, Gemini, and Libra. So that's going to happen. So let's talk, about halfway through. Let's talk a little bit about compatibility, with air signs, but compatibility with Aquarius. So compatibility is probably one of the most popular, uh, tools that a tarot person or astrologer, or intuitive, someone will ask. I mean, that's probably the most popular question is, I am married to, I'm dating I'm interested in a, fill in the blank for the sign. What do you think? How is that person and I, how compatible are we? Do we have chemistry? And of course, that's a complex question, and there's no one talented reader can tell you all of that, but they can give you clues. I mentioned in a post the other day on Instagram and in my video that astrology is all about uncovering clues. It's not about knowing it all. I certainly don't know it all, but when you know what to look for, my wife is really big into doing puzzles. She is a masteress of puzzles, and she usually does the 500s, and she does the 1,000 pieces. And my mother-in-law, also is a big, she gets it from my mother-in-law. But my wife will do these puzzles and she'll just knock it out. And I can't do that, or I won't do that. I mean, I could, but mentally I just can't. I can't put those puzzle pieces together. But give me 1,000 pieces of astrology chart, and I can put the puzzle pieces together and give you clues. So it just depends on what the interest level is. But definitely, that's what astrology is all about. So what do we look at with compatibility with Aquarius? So keeping in mind some of those traits that I said, and again, a lot of it has to do with maturity. So, an 18-year-old Aquarius will probably be different than an 80-year-old Aquarius, most likely, but you never know, right? Some people never grow up. But Aquarius, at least early Aquarius energy, that's not on a cusp like this week. So the first 2 weeks of Aquarius are not on cusps. So that's really, really true Aquarius. Aquarius energy, I think, if you don't understand and respect the Aquarius need for space, I know that's so oversimplified because we all need space in relationships. We all do. We need space to just breathe and be who we are. But Aquarius, if you can respect that and know that about Aquarius, if you really telegraph to them that you respect that and say, Aquarius, I know this. I really understand this from an astrological point of view, and I get this about you, and I'm going to give that to you. All of a sudden, guess what? Your Aquarius person is probably not going to be as rebellious, and you're going to see that sweet, thoughtful, caring humanitarian side of Aquarius. So a lot of it's how we treat each other, right? A lot of it's how you treat someone else as you want to be treated. So that would be number one for compatibility is space. Aquarius is about space. They have, like I said, the mind is always working, their mind is always going, they're always weighing information, but they're doing it in a global way, in a universal way. In Gemini can be very compatible with Aquarius because it shares Aquarius affinity for communication and lightness and being social, levity. And Gemini has a lot of ideas. Gemini is not necessarily as universally, Gemini's focus with their mind. Gemini's mind's always working, but it's usually the local scene, whether your local scene's your office, your family, your kids, your grandkids, the community, the local scene. Whereas Aquarius is the local scene in the context of the bigger group or the universe kind of thing. So Aquarians can have a natural affinity with Gemini and Libra. Libra is the third air sign. There's usually a very good natural communication with both Geminis and Libras. Now, you have to look at your placement of Uranus. If you're an Aquarius, if you're born, let me think, for example, if you're born in the mid to late 30s, you most likely have Uranus in Taurus. So an Aquarius person was ruled by Uranus and Taurus. Now that Taurus is a lot different than Aquarius. So that adds more fixity to the Aquarius planet, and it adds a little more earthiness too. So that Aquarius planet might not be as erratic, so to speak, because it might be influenced by the Uranus and Taurus. So you have to look at that. But the Gemini and Libra is always good for Aquarius, not necessarily for marriage or long-term love. But for some people, it could be good for a fling or just an honest platonic friendship. There's a good friendship there with the air signs. Now, what would be tough? What would Gemini or Libra have a tough time with some of these traits possibly, even though there's a good communication? Well, Gemini also likes space. So Aquarius and Gemini right from the start would be like, well, how much space do you need? Oh, I don't know. How much space do you need? Well, I need a good amount of space. Well, so do I. And they'll both be pretty adamant about it. It's rare that you would find an Aquarius or Gemini person that wouldn't need space, unless there's a ton of earth or water in their chart. But they could argue about that. And Gemini, we'll get to you later on, but sometimes Geminis cannot be relied on. The Gemini energy can be unreliable because of your restlessness, because of having irons in the fire everywhere. So you have an iron in your fire over here, you have an iron in your fire, because you're tending to different things. To an Aquarius, that could look scattered and then maybe say, I'm not sure. So that could be a contention. Now, what would happen with Libra, like a dynamic with Libra? Libra is very peace-loving and harmonious for the most part, especially positive Librans. But Librans have a penchant for argument. So this is what's so, I can't wait to get to Libra. Librans are so interesting to me. I really have a tough time figuring Librans out because they can be so likable and so charming. And yet, in my opinion, just my opinion, difficult. Difficult because Libras they're born lawyers. They love to argue. And sometimes they argue in a friendly way, and sometimes it's down and right. They don't want to fight, but they will argue. So how would that affect Aquarius? Well, Aquarius is very fixed in their opinions, and now Libra's argumentative about what's not right in the relationship or the justice of it or the balance of it. So that could irritate Aquarius, and Aquarius could see Libra as arguing things that are not worth it. And in other words, sweating the small stuff. Um, in general, I would think the Aquarius energy is a little higher minded than the Libra, because Libra is always balancing my needs, your needs, my needs, your needs. So that's how something that could, even though there would be good communication and also both signs want peace for the most part, there could be argument there. Again, it depends on the decade. And for a Libra person, you would look to Venus in the chart to indicate. But I'm going to talk more about in the future. I'm going to talk a lot about the compatibility of the signs. And I know we're doing sun signs here, and that's not really where it's at with astrology. It's much deeper than that. But I want to talk in depth about the dynamics between the signs, because that's really where you get the bingo of why do you vibe with some people, right? Why do you just feel a good kinship or friendship with some people and you just say, I really like this person? Or, my gosh, I don't know what it is. I've given this person a chance. I can't stand this person. This person rubs me the wrong way. There's a lot of chemistry there. But there's a lot of that can be seen in the astrological charts and the energies. And so that's a really important thing that good astrologers will find those dynamics between the chart. And I'll give you an example that relates to, since we're on the air signs, is so if you're an Aquarius, Gemini, or a Libra, you're an air sign, right? And then for Aquarius, you look to Uranus in your chart. For Gemini, you look to Mercury. And if you're Libra, you look to Venus. And those will give you big, big indicators. Now, a lot of Aquarius people, like I mentioned before, if you're born in the 30s, are going to have Uranus in a different element, like an earth sign. So imagine an Aquarius person that's possibly erratic or changeable, unpredictable, but then it's ruled by Uranus in an earth sign, where earth signs tend to be more reliable. So it's going to maybe mitigate that and maybe be a little more neutral. Then you will look at the aspects and the houses and you put that all together. By the same token, if you're a Gemini and your Mercury is also in Gemini or in your Mercury would have to be in Taurus, Gemini, or Cancer but if you were a Gemini and your Mercury was in Cancer, you would be this airy personality, airy identity, but your Mercury would be in an emotional sign, a feeling sign, where Gemini feels more through the mind. So Geminis can care more through in a more mental or friendship sort of way, whereas Cancer is more about pure feeling. So that's how that would be colored. If you're Libra, you look to Venus. I've done so many readings and charts for Libra people where they have Venus in Scorpio. So you know about Scorpio. So imagine taking a light air sign like Libra that's peace loving and wants harmony, but then placing it in the intense, murky, deep, sometimes dark sign of Scorpio. and Venus in Scorpio is not really well placed, in my opinion. So a lot of Libra people have Venus in Scorpio. So their love life can be stormy, to say the least. If that Libra person had Venus in Virgo, which is the sign before that, it would be a little less emotional and less stormy, but it could be also a little colder or a little drier for that Libra person. So again, you have to take that into account for compatibility, because if an Aquarius dates a Libra or dates two different Libras, let's say, they're going to have different Venus signs. If they date a Gemini, they might have two different Mercury signs, even though they're the same sun sign. So that's another reason why you'll hear people say, "Hey, I'm a Taurus and I'm not stubborn. I don't get it." And someone will say, I'll say, "When's your birthday?" And they'll say May 20th. And I'm like, "Okay, well, I look you up. You're 29 degrees of Taurus. You're basically a Gemini." And they'll say, I'm not stubborn at all." So there's Taurus, and they're also almost Gemini, and then their Mercury's in Gemini, and there's hardly any other Earth signs are fixed. So there's a lot to that compatibility with Aquarius. But the space thing is really big, and mutual intellectual respect and communication and interests. If Aquarius doesn't have that, Aquarius planets, if you don't have mutual respect and stimulation intellectually, then you don't have anything, because that's what you need first and foremost before anything else. So if you don't have that with someone, I'm sure that it's shut down. Your walls have shut down like probably within the first hour on a date or a friendship or whatever. So you want someone that can really entertain interesting ideas, but that's also has that breadth of mentality, which is very interesting. So that's a little bit of compatibility with Aquarius with air signs. In maybe the coming weeks, we could talk about how Aquarius kind of gets along with some of the other elements and some of the other signs that are not air. But I did want to make some honorable mentions to Gemini and Libra there. And that brings us to our last piece of the night, which is probably the most important, is the beautiful Pluto in Aquarius, which is so amazing. And I know I touched on this in the early live streams a little bit. So Pluto is now in Aquarius, and this also is going to trine Gemini and Libra, as I mentioned. It started in 2023. It's now in full effect in 2024. It's going to go retrograde in September of 24. So September of this year to November. So for, I think, 7 weeks, 6 or 7 weeks, it's going to retrograde back into Capricorn. So that's going to be a critical degree, because we're talking about 29 degrees, 30, and then 1. So it's right on the cusp there. And almost all astrology systems, astrologers agree that that's a 29 or 1 is a very critical degree and very important. And it's powerful because it's cusp, but it's going back into Capricorn. So it's going to clean up all this mess. It's the last round of cleaning all these government messes and the structuring of the banking system and the Federal Reserve and all these problems with China and England and some of the other third world countries, and a lot of this currency going digital and all. So that's all getting tied up in September. So make a note of that in your phone or your planner or your calendar to see how you feel and what's going on with current events from September 24, October 24, up to late November of 24. So then once we hit December at the end of the year, we're in full swing, full effect, Pluto and Aquarius, until I believe it's late 2043 or early 2044. So I plan to be around. Some of you might not be. You have to think about that. But it's pretty amazing to think of the generations now that are young. So like our kids now, or some of the preteens and teenagers now, right? Or Gen Z population, where they're going to be in 20 years, in 2044, how old they're going to be when Pluto changes and then goes into Pisces. Whoa, that's so cool. That's just so cool. And I'm trying to think. I don't know if I'll be live streaming then. I'll be old, but if I'm still sharp, I'll do it. Hopefully, in 20 years, I'll still be live. That would be cool. That's a good goal to shoot for. Maybe I'll see you in 20 years, or 19. But yeah, that's the big to do. Just before coming on tonight, I read 2 or 3 articles from a couple female astrologers that were really well written, and it was very similar. Their points were very similar to my notes. And so going back to 2008, so that was the financial crisis, right? So 08, 09 was our stocks took a hit and everything. And that wasn't just because of Pluto and Capricorn, but that was a major time there. And that was also a period somewhere around 07, 08, 09, and 10, where technology exploded, right? So you had all of us going on the internet in the late 90s and early 2000s and getting into the internet and the chats. But then by the late 2000s, that's when computers and laptops and tablets and smartphones just exploded, electric stuff, all the electricity. And that was still happening when it was in Pluto and Capricorn. So now fast forward 16 years, we're going from industrious Capricorn, big business, Wall Street, and lots of greed from the 90s and 2000s. I mean, it's always been there, obviously, but it was a focal point in Pluto and Capricorn in that point, with the stock market and everything. And then now we're into Pluto and Aquarius. Now, what's air? So this is a really good thing that I did when I was first learning astrology. When I was first learning astrology and I was an ultra beginner, I was looking at the elements of earth, air, fire, and water. Now, in other systems, and this is also big in Western astrology, Chinese, Japanese, and Asian astrology, they often will incorporate the wood element, and they incorporate other elements as also in the earth, and that ties into body systems and temperature, right? Cold temperatures. I can't remember what they're called, but like cold temperatures and warm temperatures. If you go to an Ayurvedic practitioner, they'll often do that, and they're versed in that. So there's a lot of interesting things there with the elements. So when I was first learning astrology, it was like earth, air, fire, and water. The best thing to do is what does air mean to you, right? Well, we're all breathing, so air is a breath of fresh air, or air is suffocating, or air is a calm, cool breeze, right? If you're feeling too fired up, if you're feeling overly emotional, or your body's feeling too heavy with the earth, air is breezy. Air can just lighten it up and cool you off, and then just step back and give you your space. That's a beautiful thing about the air element. So think about, what is air as we're in this air period for the next 3 weeks? What does air mean to you? And think about how the air element in the weather systems, the air goes from a calm, cool breeze to it starts to whip, and it breaks trees, and it wears down. It whips rocks along with the water, and the air can get very stormy, right? Hurricanes, tornadoes. A lot of that is Uranus. A lot of that is Aquarius. So if you've ever met an Aquarius person, Aquarius people usually don't lose their temper very easily, and usually have a very long rope and don't get flustered easily. But if you ever see an Aquarius person or Aquarius planet lose it, if they've had it with you, that's interesting. It's because it's mostly mental. It's not necessarily an attack on you personally. It's a mental thing. But they will shut. It's like steel gates. You're like locked out. You're locked out. So that's something to keep in mind. So just think about that air element as we're into Aquarius. We'll be into Gemini in late May. So Geminis, hang in there. Your time is coming in May. And Pluto and Aquarius is all year, like I said, until September. We're going to step back quick in Capricorn and then go back into it. But the air element is wonderful. And another thing that really is a positive for Aquarius, and I'll be on another top 3 list probably for me, is the altruism. Aquarius is wonderfully, usually, altruistic. And what I love about Aquarius people that are positive is they will give their knowledge, their time, their expertise, their advice. Sometimes even if you don't want it, they'll give you their advice, but they'll do it without expecting something in return. It's kind of different than maybe Leo. Leo might be more tied to ego. It might be more tied to their affection and what they want to get out of something, a relationship or something from someone. So the motives might not be as good. With Aquarius, generally speaking, a higher Aquarius, there's altruism and there's an unselfish quality. I love that about Aquarius planets. So if I ever get frustrated with some of the negative aspects of Aquarius planets, I often will see them on a different day and I'll see a different side of them. Especially Sun in Aquarius, Mercury in Aquarius, Venus in Aquarius people, Aquarius rising, can be very helpful and altruistic. That's a wonderful, wonderful thing. And a lot of the other signs often are not like that. So that's something where Aquarius can really teach us. And with Pluto in Aquarius, let's hope. The air is networks. So that's like literal and figurative. So networks is the network we're on now, the internet. It's Wi-Fi, it's cellular, it's the dreaded 5G, which I'm sure is not good for our health. It's it's the electrical towers, it's the electrical grid, it's artificial intelligence, it's scientific and medical advancements, which if you've been to any practicing doctor lately, I was at an appointment a few weeks ago at a doctor, and some of the machines they had, I couldn't believe the machines. I was like, oh my gosh, what is this, a Steven Spielberg movie? Like, so if you've been to the doctor or God forbid a hospital in the last year or two, you know about the advancements with some of these machines that they have, either some of the preventative testing machines, but also treatments, with the lasers and the surgery, robotic surgery arms, and it's just unbelievable. And I know some of these things have been around for 20 or 30 years, but if you look at in the last 5 to 10 years how strong these have gotten, how they're really being implemented, that's the medical advancements and technology is going to be blow up with Pluto and Aquarius. It's going to blow up. And it's not always a good thing either, because, I was talking about with my kids and myself, all of us in my family, we're all making a pact this year to get off screens more because we're all on screens too much for various reasons. Now, most of the time when I'm on a screen, I want to be doing Astroscoop and I want to be doing something productive and useful and something that's stimulating to me instead of just mindless scrolling on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, whatever it is. And I'm certainly guilty of that. Scrolling and realizing it's been a half hour and it feels like it's been 5 minutes. And it's been a half hour of doing nothing. So that's something that Pluto's going to blow up is, social media is only going to get bigger. There's going to be more communities and more groups and more chats and more things to join, which is great. I know some of you have told me that you're taking like online classes, but I don't mean necessarily mainstream classes, more of the healing arts or new age, for lack of a better term, new age classes, whether it's higher learning, Reiki, personal development, and how it relates to your chakras, the universal energy, the cosmic energy, aliens, and all that stuff is coming. With Pluto and Aquarius, you're not going to believe some of the truths that are going to come out in the next decade. And I do a lot of research into some weird stuff. And my family knows that. I'm really into offbeat stuff. But one thing I really do is I try to stay keen so that it doesn't lead me down a path I don't want to go on, if that makes any sense. And you still have to keep your center, right? And however you do that, whether it's yoga, meditation, classes, being with your kids or grandkids, snuggling with a dog or a cat, and just having them be on your root chakra or your stomach, and just close your eyes for 10 minutes with a pet. That's total healing. Whatever it is to do to be centered, because there's so many distractions. And with Pluto and Aquarius, these things are going to get huge. So that's one thing we're trying to do, is less screens. That's obviously good for everybody. We all want to be stimulated with screens and learning things. And this is wonderful that hopefully a year from now, someone might be able to watch this live stream and go, oh, I never saw this guy before. This is cool. He talked about Pluto Aquarius a year ago. 5 years from now, someone might find this live stream when Pluto just went into Aquarius. Then it's 5 years in, and they have a child now that's born with Pluto and Aquarius. So imagine that. If any of you are pregnant, or you're a father to be, or you're a grandparent, and your adult children are ready to have the next child, this year or next year, unless it's in that short period where they will have a late degree Pluto Capricorn, they're going to have Pluto in Aquarius. So how cool is that? Oh, thank you, Karen. I appreciate that. You're very welcome. You're very welcome. Thank you so much for showing up. I really appreciate it. And yeah, so I mean, imagine having a child or a grandchild in the next decade with Pluto and Aquarius, no matter what their sun sign is. I think that's so amazing. So think about our ancestors that were alive in 1777, 78, 1779 into the early 1780s. Imagine that, right? So you can figure out how old you were when your parents were born, then when your grandparents were born. And imagine, we know the difficult things that happened then and how much the world was changing as it was going into the 1800s. But that was the last time that Pluto was in Capricorn, and it finished up all those structures. And now we're going into Aquarius. So I think that's just so cool. That's so cool. And if a baby's born, let's say a baby's born tonight or even tomorrow morning, that baby is a 0 degree Pluto Aquarius. It's 0 degrees 13 minutes, absolute perfect zero, and it's the cusp. So if it goes back a degree, it would be Capricorn. So for a while, we're going to have the Pluto in Aquarius, which I really didn't mention. It's actually a Capricorn Aquarius cusp degree. So I've gotten a lot of comments from people about the Capricorn Aquarius cusp videos that I've done, and these people seem to know a lot about astrology. They're more than beginners, which is great. So they are giving me feedback on the decanates and their degrees and how it relates to their rising sign and what house. So it's wonderful that people are discovering this and are so knowledgeable, even if you don't call yourself technically an astrologer. It doesn't matter. If you're taking that upon yourself to improve yourself, the more you know, the more knowledge you have, the better you can navigate some of these, tough waters that's coming. But that Pluto Aquarius, it's 0, it's Capricorn Aquarius. It's going to still have some of that heaviness of Capricorn, but with the forward moving quality of Aquarius. So it's just really, really amazing times that we live in. And also just to look at the rest of this chart here, which is tonight's chart. I'm going to take my glasses off here. We have now this chart, the moon's in Virgo tonight. We just had the full moon, so happy post full moon. So now we're in a waning period. We're coming away from the full moon, from Leo into early Virgo. And Uranus, of course, is still in Taurus. That's stationed. Jupiter's in Taurus. So I have the Taurus going on. The node is in Aries. So that's affecting all the Aries node people. It's also affecting anyone that has Chiron or Chiron in Aries as well for healing. If it brings up any wounds for an Aries planet, It just means you need to let it go. I have Aries planets, and believe me, I have felt it. And you have to just, it comes up, you're not sure where or how it's making you feel that way. And then it's like, oh, 3 months later, it's gone. So it's not necessary. It's a prick. It's a prick. It's like a blood, blood draw. It's a prick, or a bad bee sting. So the node in Chiron's doing that with Aries planets. That's at 19 right now. Neptune Pisces, Saturn Pisces, and of course I mentioned all this Capricorn energy. And it's interesting. There's a lot of famous people. I didn't construct any particular celebrity examples for this live stream. I apologize for that. But there's a lot of famous Capricorn people that are going through some struggles right now in the public eye, and also major people that have major Capricorn stelliums. And so off the top of my head, I think I mentioned Jim Carrey, the actor, comedian, Nicolas Cage, who's also an actor, the nephew of Francis Ford Coppola. His real name is Nicholas Coppola, so he's really Italian. And there's many others that are having some issues. John Legend, the singer, is apparently having some issues in his life. Another major Capricorn. So there's a lot of heaviness there with the Capricorn transits. Now Mercury, Venus, and Mars are all personal planets, so they're going to tend to affect the natal Capricorn planets in a more personal way, as opposed to like transpersonal, where the outer planets are affecting more of kind of like the generation. But I always like to hear other astrologers' takes on that, because I always learn from other astrologers based on usually their generation and kind of their perspective of what they grew up with, kind of thing. So where are we at right now? We're at 9:08, and still seem to have a voice, so that's good. What else can we talk about? Like I said, I don't have any celebrity examples, but another thing I wanted to talk about, and this is kind of going back to mentioning about the compatibility, how we talked about compatibility with Aquarius, and then we're going to talk about the dynamics between the signs and between the planets. And the Aquarius, so most Aquarius people born in any decade, it's just natural that you're most likely going to know an Aquarius person that has major Capricorn in their chart. So that starts a dynamic, right? So now you're an Aquarius person, and then you have something in Capricorn, whether it's Mercury, it could be Mercury. I often have met a lot of Aquarians that have Venus in Capricorn, which is the love nature, which is very different than Aquarius. Mars, they could have Mars in Capricorn, or the moon, depending on that time of the month, because every month there's a time where the moon's in Capricorn for 2.5 days. So that's where dynamics come into play. So you might meet an Aquarius that's 70 years old, and he or she has Venus in Capricorn. And then you might meet an Aquarius that's 20 years old, and he or she might have Venus in Capricorn. Totally different charts and generations, but same sun sign and then the Venus. So a lot of astrology is seeing those patterns and then combining that. And I mentioned the Capricorn with Aquarius because we just came off of Capricorn, and the Capricorn Aquarius period, people will have one of the other signs almost always in the chart. It's very rare that you don't have the sign before you or after you in your natal chart, just because of the phases and the degrees. So it's often quite common that you could have your Mercury sign in the previous sign. So Aquarius is going to have an Aquarius person, their Mercury is going to be in Aquarius, Capricorn, or Pisces. That's it. It can only be in those 3 signs based on the degrees of any decade. Even a baby born right now. If a baby's born right now, he or she's an Aquarius with a Mercury in Capricorn. But if you wait a little bit, that there will be another baby born with the sun in Aquarius with Mercury in Aquarius. So that's a very interesting kind of dynamic. So that's what you gotta. That's kind of what we look for. Is it's almost like um, if you talk to a financial advisor or a planner, your financial advisor is giving you they give you the snapshot of your money, right? Of your life. So they give you the graphs and they give you the pie, and you have 20% in bonds, and you have 20% in ETFs, and then you have this much in this stock, and you have Apple, and you have McDonald's, and you have Starbucks, and you have Lululemon or whatever. And so you have all that. And so they give you the big picture, and then they zoom in on the details and say, hey, most of your money's with Google. Is that still good? Or you have a lot of money in Apple. Apple's doing really well with their iPhones right now, sort of thing. So they're giving you the big picture, and they're giving you, well, astrology is very similar, like to the finances, because you start to see the patterns, the up and down patterns, and you see the longer term results, just like you do with investing. Like investing is only for the long game. The 3, 5, 10, 15 years, that's where your investing pays off, not in 6 months. People get frustrated and get emotional. And they're like, oh, I lost all this money, kind of thing. But that's a good thing with astrology too, is to see those dynamics playing together with the signs, similar signs and similar charts. If you know someone that's born under a sign, let's say 2 or 3 people that are Aquarius, and you're like, boy, they're all very similar. Male, female, doesn't matter, different generations, different ages. Chances are they're going to have more than one similar placement. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the live stream, Mars in Aquarius, I find to be a very strange kind of placement for some people. That's a placement that to me as an astrologer is most prone to erratic behavior, is Mars in Aquarius. That doesn't mean they're negative people. It doesn't mean that they're not nice or mean or anything. It just means there's something about them that can change so quickly that can be jarring and can be upsetting to some people. So chances are, if you know an Aquarius that has a Mars in Aquarius from one age and another age, even though they're wildly different, they have different natal charts. They're brought up by different parents, and they're different generations. You'll see a thread. If you look at their life and look at their interests and how they behave, you're guaranteed to see some sort of thread that's similar. And I guess by the sheer law of numbers, a lot of astrology skeptics can say that, well, that's just the law of numbers. The odds are you're going to find people that are just going to behave like that, which is probably true. But it's interesting that as an astrologer, it's not foolproof. But when you start to see patterns, it's it gets into percentages. That's kind of how I look at it. It's like some astrologers make predictions for 2024. You see all these articles and videos, and I generally don't do that because I don't want to tell you something is so absolute that this is what's going to happen in 2024, bar none, boom. And then it doesn't happen. And you're like, well, that guy was so convicted about it. And, it's more of a percentage, a likelihood. Is it 70? Is it 80%? So that's really what astrology here, when you have the similar signs to grouping in a chart, is there's a strong likelihood to certain behavior. And then it's really up to the person how they use it. It's up to a lot of it is that maturity level, right? When I think about my own chart and I think about how I behaved when I was 21, when I was 30, when I was 40, when I think of those times, I'm still myself. I'm still who I was at 18 and 21. I can even feel some of the feelings. I can think those, I could still think of some of those youthful thoughts, whether it's positive or negative. And I can remember the friends I had at those ages. But, it's really the evolvement and how you use it. And unfortunately, there seems to be certain placements in charts, which is why astrologers kind of get negative with some of the signs, because astrologers see some of these same kind of placements over and over with aspects where people are kind of misusing them because it's hard to understand. And I think in that case, that person is probably a law unto themselves, so to speak. So if you know, and this isn't just Aquarius, but if you just know someone that's gone down a bad path, with drugs or crime, or they're just is just on a bad path, and they can't seem to accept help from anyone, from any capacity, whether it's family, friends, professional help, coaching. That's too bad, because they're kind of a law unto themselves. So they're using that energy in their natal chart. They haven't risen above it. Whatever their weaknesses or deficiencies are possibly in the chart, they haven't risen above that. And they might be 35, 40, 45, 50 years old, and they still haven't, they haven't transcended that natal chart to the point where it matters, but it doesn't matter, because they're using their energy. It's the same energy they had, their Mars sign or whatever, but it's used differently, that kind of thing. So that's a real important thing for astrologers, that some astrologers I notice don't necessarily talk about, is the evolvement. The more spiritual astrologers do. The astrologers that are, I'm probably in the middle, as far as you kind of your practical, scientific, rational astrologers, and those are the ones that usually write books or have 2 or 3 books going. And there's those, they're awesome. They help all of us to have a foundation of astrology. Then you have astrologers like me that's a blend. There's the practical, there's the scientific, there's the intuitive. I have the spiritual angle on it. And then you have those intuitive spiritual mediums that either use tarot or astrology or Native American wisdom, and they're like all in. They're all in 100% on the spirituality and the tuning in and everything, the tuning forks and everything. And there's a place for that. But it all depends on that how you use it, that evolvement, that maturity. So someone could be super spiritual, but in their personal life, they still might be living an immature life, an irresponsible life, even though they're smart and they consider themselves spiritual, sort of thing. So it really depends on where you're at for that. And it's just another thing. It's just a beautiful thing about astrology, that it just always, once you understand the basics, then you kind of you go your own path with it. Like, you get the basics down, and there's a lot of people that know the basics well of astrology, but that I notice don't necessarily, but they're very dry with it. Like, they're not expansive with it, or they don't take into account the generational perspectives, which are so important. And how could you not? Because when we talk about Pluto and Aquarius, and you talk about people that were born in the 1770s, if a baby was born in the late 1770s, he or she had Pluto and Aquarius, some of those leaders and stuff. So, I mean, that's just so amazing. So I'm kind of losing my voice here. So to close it out, let's just do a quick little meditation, and we could just concentrate. You concentrate on whatever you want. Concentrate on the sun in Aquarius. If you have an Aquarius planet, picture that Aquarius planet getting that healing from Pluto. Pluto is powerful. Pluto is healing. So you can get that. You can focus positively on that. You can think, oh, it's going to be erratic and mess my life up, or you can think it could help heal. So let's close our eyes. Let's breathe. One technique I like to do, which a lot of people do, and this isn't special to me, is I believe it's the 4-7-8 method. I believe Dr. Andrew Weil and Deepak Chopra both use this. So it's 4, hold for 7, and then exhale for 8. Now that's one round. Isn't that amazing? Like, it's so true. It's so true. That's instant. Let's do that again. Another 4. and 8. So 4, 7, 8. So we'll do that one more time. 4 in. I know it might feel corny, but that's 3 rounds. And it's amazing how that works. So even if you felt calm before that, right? Isn't that clear? I like that. All right, so let's end on that note. My voice is shot. Thank you so much for attending. This is Livestream Astroscoop number 5. I do plan to be live next Saturday. And I'm also considering doing an impromptu, maybe every other week, once or twice a month, doing a lunchtime live stream. I'm not sure which day and time. I'm thinking maybe a Thursday. I might be able to do a Thursday at 11 a.m. or 12 p.m. because I have a little flexibility at that time. It wouldn't be an hour, though. It'd probably be more like a half-hour live stream. So maybe we'll do that. But if you're not already, please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share. That's what I always say in my videos. Until the next time, stay safe and be yourself. Thank you once again, and have a great 2024.